Hey there, true crime friends. Listen, there is a scandal that has broken out in the true crime world, and it is a teensy bit complicated, but I sort of needed to take a moment to just break it down and explain it to everybody who is a teensy bit confused about it. So look, I had to make a chart. That's how complicated it is. But please, I need you to lower your expectations as it relates to my chart making skills. Because I'm here. I'm good with the gossip. Oh, honey, I have the tea. But making a chart to illustrate it, that is not my gift. That gift belongs solely and exclusively to our dear BFF, Brandy Churchwell, over there on the Churchwell charts. So maybe Brandy will make a chart to explain this whole madness. But in the meantime, I just have like paper and a pencil, and let me explain. Okay, so look, this drama is about TCO, True Crime Obsessed Podcast. So look, once upon a time, there was a little baby podcast called the True Crime Obsessed Podcast, starring Patrick Hinds and Jillian Pensavalli. And it was my very first podcast and my very first true crime comedy podcast. And I loved it so much. They took true crimes and they broke them down and they made them like hilarious and accessible and not like needing you to call a therapist, that type of thing, right? It's like you got all the good with like none of the trauma. And I was like, this is magical. Took off during the pandemic and I was living for it. From the very first podcast, I was like, oh my God, they're so funny. They're so relatable. They're like the little engine that could, two podcasters out there trying to make it happen. And their podcast blew up. It was everywhere. Their Patreon went crazy. Their episodes were amazing. Everything was great. They got so big that they made the Obsessed Network. You see how that works? True Crime Obsessed became the Obsessed Network. The Obsessed Network was run by Patrick from TCO and his husband, Steve. Jillian, she just stayed up here with True Crime Obsessed. And so I thought she was out of the way, but she was still lurking in the background. So Patrick and Steve made the True Crime Obsessed Network. Well, what is a network but a bunch of podcasts? So the network had a bunch of podcasts. They have many podcasts. The two podcasts that are associated with this scandal are two. There's the I Think Not podcast with Ellen and Joey, and the Not a True Crime Barbie podcast with Tara and Collier. There's a bunch of other podcasts, but we'll get to those later. So look, I Think Not used to be Obsessed with Disappeared. They changed the name to I Think Not. It's hilarious. And Joey and Ellen are just, they're loves. They are sweethearts. And the Barbie podcast, I have never heard. Unlikely at this point that I'll ever follow it because I'm following enough true crime. And that is hosted by Tara and Collier. Collier is a crime victim. His dad killed his mom and he heard it. And then he testified against his father in a court of law. Oh my God. And so he has since made his own podcast about surviving trauma, whatever. Tara is Tara Newell from, what was she on? Dirty John. Remember the Dirty John podcast where like this grifter dude hooks up with this rich lady in Southern California and like gets her to separate from her family and separate from her money. And he's a terrible, terrible person. And then John was killed by the daughter of the lady he was grifting. The daughter who killed John is Tara Newell. So Tara and Collier hook up for the Barbie podcast, and Ellen and Joey, two Broadway legends, are minding their own business doing their very hilarious and delightful I Think Not podcast. And then there's a whole bunch of other podcasts on the Obsessed Network. So everything is going good, right? Everything is fine. And then Obsessed Fest is a festival that celebrates all things true crime and the Obsessed Network. And many people last year flocked to, where was it? Like Cleveland, Ohio for the first Obsessed Fest. And it was a huge hit. Huge hit. People had an amazing time. They had a drag brunch and drag bingo, and it was all inclusive and everything was lovely. Here's what happened next though. The I Think Not podcast, Ellen and Joey had a falling out with Patrick and Steve. So these podcast people had a falling out. Here's the thing. Patrick and Ellen are friends from college. So they've known each other for like 20, 30 years now, a really long time. But Patrick, after he got the Obsessed Network, became kind of a nightmare. Horrible to his employees, just like demanding and spoiled and bratty and childish. And Steve, his business partner, just sort of stood by and was like, well, okay, and became a Patrick apologist. Jillian, also a Patrick apologist. So the internet did what the internet does, and that is that people who had worked for the Obsessed Network started whispering like, oh, well, you know, he did this and he did that and he fired that one and he threatened to fire this one and he stormed out of a meeting and he cursed this one out in a meeting and blah, blah, blah. He was horrific. One day in a staff meeting, Ellen and Joey were in the staff meeting and Patrick starts going off on Ellen, his longtime friend from college. And Joey was like, no, what you're not going to do is talk crazy to my friend. And Patrick blows up in front of everybody and has a big fit and then says to them, you can take your podcast and go. But first, because it belongs to Obsessed Network, you're going to have to buy it from Obsessed Network for $3 million. Ellen is very upset. Joey is very upset. Meanwhile, they're like, let's put together our coins so we can buy our podcast and separate from the madness. So Ellen and Joey bought their podcast out of the Obsessed Network, and they're over here now all on their own lonesome. Some of the other podcasts from the True Crime Obsessed Network were like, this is some bullshit. So they took their podcast and they started their own thing, and now Ellen and Joey are associated with some of those other random podcasts. Great. Only here's the thing. This past weekend was Obsessed Fest 2. The second time this big festival celebrating all things Obsessed Network happened this weekend. Shortly before Obsessed Fest happened, some people took information from Reddit and information that was floating free range around the internet. This dude, James Renner, was like, hey, people who are upset, who used to work at the Obsessed Network, please come and tell me all your stories, spill all the tea. And child, people showed up and showed out, and they told James Renner everything. And so he wrote a scathing article ripping the curtains down, and so people could see what garbage Patrick and Jillian and Steve really were. If you will recall, these are our founding people up here. Turns out they're all garbage. According to the internet, not according to me. So I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. But listen, contracts were signed a long time ago. So Ellen and Joey still are obligated to appear at Obsessed Fest, even though they're no longer associated with the network. They're like, okay, we're going to keep our obligations and we are still going to go and do our 2 required appearances at Obsessed Fest. And we're going to hug all of our fans and we're going to talk to people and it's going to be a great weekend. So they get there and they're minding their own business. And in an elevator, enter Tara and Collier. Ellen's in an elevator, putting on her shoes, headed off to like a meet and greet or whatever. And Tara Newell and in the elevator is Ellen, Tara, and Collier, right? And so Tara says something to Ellen, and Ellen did not recognize it, didn't know the heifer, and was like, I'm sorry, what's your name? And she's like, my name is Tara Newell, and starts yelling at Ellen and telling her to F off and saying, you've ruined my life and blah, blah, blah. And Ellen's like, I'm sorry, who are you and what are you talking about? Collier, Tara's boyfriend, is like, Google us because blah, 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 blah. Girl, I'm gonna need y'all to sit all the way down. So Ellen was like, okay, and just sort of like runs off to do her little meet and greet. After her meet and greet, Tara again confronts Ellen in the lobby and starts screaming and ranting and raving at her like she's a maniac. And of course, the screaming, she's like, just leave us alone. Just leave us alone. Okay, ma'am. Nobody was bothering you in case you didn't notice. And now Joey is here. Joey is like 6 foot 1,000. And Joey is like, okay, everybody calm down. Can you, I see she's upset. I'm going to back away, but Collier, I'd like to talk to you one-on-one. I don't understand. And so Tara's like, freaking out, full white lady tears. That is a quote from others, not from me. freaking out. And Joey is like, okay, I can see she's upset. I'm going to take a step back. Tara is losing her mind. Meanwhile, somebody who was standing there when this exchange went down caught it on video. And you see Tara freaking out, look over. She notices the camera and then she puts on a smile and walks off screen. Okay, Miss Tara, manipulative much? And Joey is like, okay, okay, whatever. After that, Ellen was like, listen, convention organizers, I don't feel safe with this situation because there's clearly an unhinged woman over there in a pink Barbie shirt and she is losing her ever-loving mind. And security is like, nah, we won't escort her off the property. And Ellen was like, wait, what? She verbally assaulted me. I don't know. And you know she unalived people, right? Because she not safe. And so security was like, no. But your producers, the person who filmed it and whoever else, they are getting kicked out of the venue. What? Okay. The people who kicked Ellen's producer out of the venue is a friend of Patrick and Jillian and all the Obsessed Network people. And Ellen was like, okay, this is 100 kinds of crazy. I'm not going to stay here in the lobby where all this is going down. I'm going to go outside and meet and greet my fans outside, and I'm going to hug everybody, and then I'm going to take my behind home because this is 100 kinds of crazy. Meanwhile, Tara continues to go through the venue acting like an unhinged person, and people are like, oh, so you know the internet was ablaze with chatter and video and reported sightings and whatever. Meanwhile, there's a video out in these true crime streets that shows Ellen Marsh being comforted by her podcast partner, Joey Taranto. And listen, everybody needs to be loved the way that Joey loves Ellen. I'm just saying. Anyway, so the drama continues all weekend. Ellen rises above. Joey rises above. Jillian and Patrick and them, listen. They are taking crazy losses because the drag brunch that is kind of the closing event for Obsessed Fest, normally it's sold out. You can't get a seat. Nobody can move. Something like 300 people did not show up. So there were all these empty tables in the back of the room, but people were like, wait, the drag performers didn't do anything wrong. And so all of the QR codes for the drag performers have been posted all over the internet all weekend. So you can tip those performers whether or not you were at the show. Oh, let me see if I can find those QR codes because those ladies need to be tipped and taken care of despite all the madness. Look, what is the future of the Obsessed Network? I think the Obsessed Network is going to be fine, honestly. What is the future of Obsessed Fest? Unclear. What is the future of True Crime Obsessed, Patrick Hinds and Jillian Pensavalli and their garbage behavior? Child, unclear. More will be revealed. But honey, people in the true crime world, people in the Obsessed Network world have very definitely taken sides. And so there is a private Facebook group called Obsessed with Obsessed. It's not that private, but it's for all the people who are in the know on all things Obsessed Network. And Ellen is on that group. I believe Joey is in that group. And then over the weekend, Collier Landry signed up to be in that group. So people can watch Collier's interactions with others. They can watch, and people are called, the woman, Ashley, who got kicked out for recording the crazy Tara Newell video. She had words for Collier and she posted her words, all of them, over on the Obsessed Network, Obsessed with Obsessed Facebook group. Child, it's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot of madness going on in this entire little situation and scenario. And I'm just here for the gossip. Child, I am just here for the gossip. Patrick Hinds has been revealed to be a spoiled, whiny, kind of a tyrant. Honestly, at this point, he might just be overexposed. Now, I know he loves the look at me of the entire situation. He might need to fall back. Ellen Marsh has revealed herself to be a love. And initially I was like, I love Ellen. She's funny, but she's a lot. She's a big mouth broad. And I myself am also a big mouth broad. So I totally relate. But I'm watching her navigate this situation. And I was like, oh, Miss Ellen has come through with some dignity. And so look, Knives are out for Patrick, Jillian, Steve, and the Obsessed Network. The bad people, not the good one. I'm sure there's some perfectly lovely people who work there, but more will be revealed in this ongoing drama, and I will be perched watching to see what happens next. I'll let you know when I find something out. Bye-bye.